Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's get the party started. Thank you for coming, everybody. My name is Munir Mirza. I am the director of End User Computing in AWS. So I run the Workspaces team, I run AppStream, I run the DCV protocol, I run the Workspaces secure browser, the thin client. Happy Monday. Welcome to reInvent. This is, my 8th time, I believe, doing it. Good opportunity to meet a lot of new faces, a lot of folks I don't recognize in the crowd, so this is awesome. This means either I'm in the wrong spot or I'm actually doing a lot to get a lot of new attention for our business. And of course, there's a bunch of faces that I recognize, and I look forward to chatting and hanging out and spending a ton of time with you all throughout the week. So this is us. This is the cast of characters that we have here today. I mentioned myself, Giovanni from Ferrari, the head of cloud operations, and Michael from Bloomberg, who's head of data science. Ton to talk about today. Absolute ton to talk about today for all of us. I don't want to spend too much time talking about who we are, what we do, and why it's beneficial, why enterprises, why governments, why ISVs all find it interesting. I would love for my two guests to spend a ton of time taking through all of the lessons that they've learned, all of the things that they're applying. But I do have some content to start with first. First, it's frankly, why we here, our industry exists. It exists because of all of you and all of the problems that you encounter on a regular basis. There is not one way that I could describe the work that I do on a regular basis with each and every one of you as customers without using the word constraints. Everything that you see here as constraints, right? And it's crazy. It's crazy, whether you're living in the United States and you've got a number of new sort of cost-conscious things that you're being aware of, like, hey, is the cost of a laptop going to go up next year? How is that going to factor into my Windows 11 migration? What does it mean to be current with my licenses? What does it mean to be on the latest hardware sets? What do I have the Gen AI capabilities that I need, both from a software and from a hardware perspective? Tons of cost conversations that you need to think about. And nobody has ever said to me, hey, we don't care about security. It's just not going to happen. You might wake up, let's say on a Friday, benign, Friday, you think, okay, this is going to be great, easy day of work, I'm going to coast into the weekend. And you might realize that, hey, you can't log in, right? And not just you, but lots of people at your office aren't going to be able to log in. You're going to think, oh, okay, like, hey, there's some security event going on. And maybe, it's a benign security event going on. Well, believe me, I hear about that all the time. July was just as painful for me as it was for a lot of you, and we're working very, very closely with our partners in the industry to make sure that we have the right solutions in place so that it doesn't impact companies and businesses in the way that it did in the past. Now, there's something really interesting that's happening in our industry as well, and that's starting to think a lot more about sustainability. What does it mean for all the garbage that we're creating, all the power that we're consuming, whether it's, battery locally or whether it's, using the public cloud? All of this leaves some sort of carbon footprint. There was a report by Canalys that talked about 240 million devices that potentially needs to be changed over the next 18 months as a result of the Windows 10 to Windows 11 migration. So again, like, hey, where are these things going to go? Which landfill is it going to take it? And there's toxic waste. There's all kinds of stuff that you have to deal with. So these are some of the constraints that I hear about on a regular basis. And my job wouldn't be complete if this isn't what my team and I manage to deal with on a day-to-day basis. How? Right? How do we think about this stuff? Well, we think about this stuff, again, with some of the things that you see here, some of the things that I'm super proud of. The ability for you to upgrade your operating system. It's not always simple, and I get that. We're working to make it so much better, so much easier. The ability for you to scale up and scale down on demand. I'm going to spend a good deal of time talking about this, but everybody who operates a contact center and has had to get ready for Black Friday knows exactly the pain that I'm talking about. How much do you overbuy? That is one of the toughest questions that our industry has to deal with. It's a hardware problem, it's a software license problem, and that is something that my team just says, hey, we will take this on. This is our problem, to the best of our ability. And obviously, we're going to need some input from you guys. We're going to need the ability to show how we can scale up and scale down. But this overbuy problem is real. It's big, it's important, it's hard, it's something that we like to take on. It's something that we're very, very proud of, how we execute. And then, I've been talking to some of my colleagues here just before this chat. The last key thing that I would talk about is just how easy it is to manipulate the services that we have. Now, I want to give you all the bells and whistles that you need in the console. I want you to be able to, list out all the content you have in your directories, but we know that that's hard. We know that that's sometimes overwhelming in the amount of information that could be there. So we have our APIs. You can call it yourself. You can query, you can edit, you could update, you could delete, you could do all the things that you would expect to do when calling an AWS service. And what do you get? You get a fully provisioned desktop, right? That's pretty neat. You get Chrome running that you'll never have to deal with that ever again. You get a thin client delivered to somebody's house. This super, super compelling way of going about interacting with all of our end users and all of our customers. When I go to bed at night, I'll tell you honestly, I think about 3 things when I think about my work. These are the 3 things, our tenets, our maxims. These are the 3 things that power us. And it is my commitment to each and every one of you that I will not rest until we address every single one of these points as perfectly as we possibly can. And I chose that word carefully, as perfectly as we possibly can. That means we've got work to do. It means that we've got a ton of innovation, a ton of diving deep, a ton of problem solving that we get to do on behalf of and in concert with all of our customers. When we talk about flexibility, we want you to be able to try different things out. We want you to be able to say, okay, I can go from one bundle to another. I can go from multi-session to pools to fully persistent. I can go from bring your own license to server licenses. I can bring my own Citrix license. I can bring my own Microsoft 365 license. That is super compelling to us. And we think, while we have a ton of work to do, we are very proud of the flexibility that we give to our customers today. Choice is another thing. We want you to be able to choose your own adventure. We want to provide some guardrails. We want to be able to say, hey, our defaults are good enough for you to spin up a large enterprise and get going. We've got numerous examples of customers that have spun up in weeks with thousands of users, tens of thousands of users in under a month, hundreds of thousands of users at Amazon that use workspaces on a regular basis. All because they have freedom of choice for the type of technology and the type of tools that they need. And lastly, look, it's got to be usable, right? It's got to be something that, hey, your end users don't fuss over. Lots of room for improvement there, and yet a lot of ground that we've covered. We have the broadest range of Linux operating systems. We have one of the broadest ranges for people to log in, including using multi-factor auth and a number of different IDPs. Our partnerships are very, very deep, not just with SI partners, but with ISV partners to be able to solution entirely. So that customer experience is something super, super critical, and we are always striving to offer the best. Now, every now and again, you're humbled. You're humbled by some things that happen in your industry. You're recognized as a leader, and this is one of those things that I'm super proud of. This is a tremendous amount of effort that goes into Gartner being able to say, hey, Amazon Web Services, End User Computing is recognized as a leader in the 2024 Desktop as a Service Magic Quadrant. 3 key reasons they called out. The first is viability. What does that mean? Tons of different AWS services that we integrate with, right? And so, hey, if you're a company that is invested in AWS, all right, Workspaces is going to work for you because you're going to be able to take advantage of your investments in other parts of the cloud. Our region footprint, 16, 17 different regions, more coming next year. And oh my gosh, I am excited to lift the lid on something that is going to be super, super compelling, that's going to blow that region footprint out of the water. Chat about with me offline, and I'll tell you, next year, we've got something really, really special for both Workspaces and AppStream that is just going to totally change our approach. And finally, hey, we offer you these sort of abilities to call, to manipulate our services with the APIs, with the control panel, with the console rather, that you would expect, right? This is what an AWS service should be like. It should be that you can do what you want to do in a number of different ways. You can automate, you could use the console, a lot of other dashboards that are integrated with it. But that's what it means for us to be recognized as a leader, those three things, and it's, again, super humbling. Talked about a lot of these things already. What we offer fundamentally, virtual desktop, streaming applications, and hey, thinking about your endpoint. That's something new that we added last year. That ability to think about things end to end. Now, it turns out some of our colleagues in the industry are thinking about things end to end as well. But at a price point that includes shipping, that includes operating the devices, that thinks about security very, very different from the ground up. We're very excited about the offering that we have. We find it super compelling. We've got a number of use cases of it, and it couldn't have gone better. When we think about just our virtual desktops, a few key things that I want to call out, right? Number one, some stuff that's not here on the slide. Multi-region resilience. Remember that day in July I was talking about, that ability for you to wake up on a Friday and realize, hey, maybe you can't log in? Well, guess what? We have a solution for that. And it's adopted by a number of very, very large companies for compliance, for business continuity reasons. And how cool is it that you could just say, hey, I just want to be able to log in and get going. I don't want to fuss. I don't want to think twice about whether my users can or can't be productive. And when we think about Workspace's core, you might have heard me use this language about the easy button, that easier transition from on-prem to the cloud. The ability for you to bring your own licenses with Citrix, with Omnissa, formerly VMware, their Horizon 8, WorkSpot, LeoStream, many, many more in the works. That is something that customers are telling us, look, this is going to help me for the next several years. I'm in a pinch. I have a customer experience issue. My users are trained on how to use these tools. And what Workspace's core allows me to do is, hey, change the footprint of my costs by moving from my on-prem to the cloud without changing any of the operating tools and without changing the user experience. And so this is some of the things that we get lauded very regularly by a bunch of customers. And the really, really neat thing about it is it takes just days to get going, right? This is the kind of thing where we've seen 0 to 100 real quick with this, right? It's been super fast to watch customers just come in and in under 3 months, thousands of users on board. Nothing to think about because it's something they've been operating forever. And then lastly, and again, something that you probably heard me say, hey, when you don't need a desktop, when all you're doing is using the browser all day, why are you paying for? Why are you paying for a $30, $40, $50, $60 desktop when a $7 per user per month desktop or browser will do just fine? Fully managed Chrome, you're never going to have to think about updating it ever again, ever. You have control over the data. Just 2 weeks ago, we launched a number of DLP features for it, a bunch of redaction, security-related features. So this is the kind of thing that we're innovating in to help people completely reset the floor. Now, AppStream is something that customers ask me about a ton, right? This is where I'm seeing the most amount of usage these days, the most amount of new customers thinking about the future, the most amount of new customers saying, hey, look, yes, I understand it has a desktop. Yes, I understand it has multi-session. But I really want to move towards a zero-trust environment. I really want to get out of delivering everything as a desktop and all the things that come with securing a desktop. I would love to just say, hey, I got my chiclets. I can invoke. I can double-click. I can start accessing all of the apps directly from that. That is the world that we're seeing a lot of customers move towards. Now, it's taking a little bit of time. You know, you have very, very large application catalogs. You have very, very large compatibility, you know, between these applications that are interacting with each other. And hey, desktops make that very simple. And desktops make troubleshooting issues between those apps very simple. Well, okay, so there's some work that has to happen. But when you want to move towards a world where people can access their applications and data however you want in a zero trust model, AppStream is the way to go. And then from an ISV perspective, how cool is this? You could take a legacy app and you can start your transition to whether it's going to be fully native, fully cloud native, or whether it's going to be, you know, graphical in nature, and you're going to need to do some form of pixel streaming, media entertainment, oil and gas, manufacturing, all sorts of research using AppStream today to deliver ISV-based applications. Thin client, talked about it. Super, super compelling end-to-end. Right? This is the idea that you could say, look, it includes shipping to a virtual desktop, right? And you get it all on one bill. And that's one of the nicest things about this, is that we have thought very critically about how to make it so that a user can log in, can be secure, can unbox, how the admin can see what's there, how an admin can turn on and turn off privileges, how an admin can know whether the endpoint is running the latest software, how an admin can sleep at night knowing that somebody is not sideloading stuff onto this device. There's on and on and on, starting at under a couple $100, under $270, including the hub for dual screens. So this is like, you know, the kind of thing, again, that we're saying, hey, we really want to help people think about how to lower the floor of costs in your enterprise. That's where the thin client comes in. We've done a bunch. We're happy about it. You know, some of the ones that I think we get pushed on regularly, people don't really know. We have full Entra ID support, so that Entra join, what used to be domain join, yeah, we support that. I mentioned earlier, we have the biggest footprint of Linux, Red Hat, Ubuntu, Rocky, in addition to our Amazon Linux offerings. Right? And one of the things that has been happening, you know, for folks who have noticed that there has been a performance improvement in a lot of your workspaces, that's because under the covers, we've been migrating everybody from the used to be T3, sometimes T2 instances, to M7. And we're just doing that. Now, we're not doing it blindly. We're not doing it without, you know, permission of a lot of folks. But what we've been seeing is 20 to 30% improvement in performance. At the bare minimum. Microsoft Teams, which we're all waiting, we're very close to launching the client-side media optimization for Microsoft Teams, but now we're finding that a lot of customers are saying, hey, this is actually just working. So this is the kind of thing that we've been doing under the covers. We've not increased prices. There's no work required for anybody here. It's just something that we're doing. Very, very proud to be able to get that out. Now, when we think about some verticals, we think about, all right, how do we partner, I mentioned that a little bit earlier, you know, with a number of incumbents, people who've been doing this for a very, very long time. So one of the verticals that we've thought very, very critically about and we've been working a lot with is the healthcare vertical. Now, the interesting thing about working with healthcare is, you know, these folks think about everything end-to-end with their data center, right? It's not just, hey, how do I get my desktops to the cloud? They have to think about the applications that people are going to be accessing, right? And it has very good reason that they think about things, that IT admins in doctors' offices and healthcare think about this. It's because, hey, if any of us go to the doctor, we're not going to want to sit and wait for like, oh, it's connecting to the database to try and pull my medical records. Certainly not when it's an emergency. And that's the kind of real-time thinking that they have to do. And so our job, as much as possible, is to solve the entire thing soup to nuts. That's where some assistance from some of our colleagues comes in. So we have Citrix and ControlUp as a DEX tool. Why am I talking about a DEX tool? Well, a DEX tool actually matters a lot, especially if you're sort of using performance quality benchmarks. You want to know whether this is working or not working as it was working before. That's where Control Hub comes in. It's super effective in telling you whether something is or is not performing to the standard that you would expect. Or if you're having bottlenecks, again, Control Hub is wonderful at being able to tell you, hey, this is where we think something is choking. And Citrix has been doing it for a number of years, working not just with the Epic health system, but with lots of different health systems. And you have to think about identity, whether you have a smart card to tap and go, whether you have a username and password that's required, whether you're bringing in one type of medical application or another. These are the kinds of problems that Citrix has been thinking about for years. So we love, love, love the idea that our customers are able to put it all together. It's not just a one-size-fits-all sort of shop. This is the kind of thing that we've worked on to make sure that we cover everything end to end. Now, I talked a lot about costs, and this was that Black Friday example if you run a contact center. Why does this graph matter? Well, this is probably something that you see, right? This is when you think about modeling out your staff coming in, hey, what is it going to actually look like insofar as that overbuy? Right? I have to buy at peak plus some buffer, and that has to be for my licenses and my infrastructure. And so, hey, pools, well, yeah, great. Pools has been around, non-persistence has been around in our industry for a very long time. Yeah, but with AWS, we can assure you that you're paying hourly. And if you configure it right, and we will help with that, we will make sure that when those agents start spinning down, your costs start going down, and we can show it. And that's important. That's important. You don't have to come to us. You don't have to buy reserved instances for 1 or 3 years. You can just come to us and say, hey, I'm increasing my service limits. Make this happen for me, and we will. And that's my commitment to you. And oh, by the way, we'll also upgrade your hardware as we go to make it a more performant experience. But this is one of the most important things that we really, really want to get across. We are committed to being able to deliver this sort of cost structure to you without you having to think about it. And of course, it's fully integrated with the AWS Cost Optimizer. And so, hey, if you're leaving the lights on weekends and there's an opportunity to turn some off, it'll tell you. And why not make it even better? Think about our thin client. Think about the end-to-end user experience. Now, this isn't going to fit every single use case, and I get that. All of us get that, right? If your user needs mobility, the ability to pick up the laptop and go home, yeah, we get it. This is something that is probably not going to be for them. But if you're thinking about how to control costs securely and being able to provide the latest operating systems, access to the tools that you would need, this is something that we think can't be beat, pools plus our thin client. Now here's something we didn't make a lot of fanfare about because we're still in the learning phases and there's still a ton of learning to happen here. But we do have an integration with our Linux desktops and Amazon Q. It's really neat, the ability for you to auto-generate some suggestions with your code, the ability to take advantage of Q for Developer across all of AWS. This is trial, no cost to you. No harm in kicking the tires here to see what works and what doesn't work for your enterprise, for your organization, especially if you're an AWS-heavy development shop. We think this is something that'll be super, super compelling for you. We'd love for you to try it out and learn more. My favorite slide. It's also the most humbling slide. I used to call it the NASCAR slide, but I'll call it the Formula One slide in light of my guests from Ferrari here. The idea is, hey, these are the companies that we work with on a regular basis. I'm so humbled to put this slide up. It is so cool to think about the opportunity to meet with, to learn from, to partner with, and to problem solve together with every one of these customers. And as the expression goes, this is just the tip of the iceberg. But I can't put this slide up without saying thank you. You guys are truly, truly awesome. I enjoy every minute working with you, learning from you, and I look forward waking up every day to be able to do exactly that, whether it's the hard problems, the things that you're frustrated about, or the things that you're super excited about. I look forward to these conversations regularly. Global footprint, really excited that recognized by Gartner, by our customers. Quite a bit more coming too. Stay tuned. All right, when I think about Ferrari, not only do I think about something that from my childhood made me really, really happy, really, really excited, I also think about luxury. I think about speed. I think about performance. Now, earlier this year, I had a chance to hang out with my colleague Giovanni and learn about how Ferrari goes about thinking of desktops and IT. With that, I would love to tell you what I learned was all the things that I thought about as a child, all the things that I think about today as an adult are exactly what imbibes Ferrari culture. It's about performance, it's about speed, it's about precision, it's about luxury. Enough of me, I'd love to introduce Giovanni Longobardi. Giovanni, take it away.
Thank you, Munir. So, think about performance, think about speed, but think about also to passion. So, hi all, I'm Giovanni Longobardi, the Cloud Engineering Manager in Ferrari, and in this session we will see how we have introduced innovation thanks to the Amazon Workspaces. So, we will start from the early beginning of our journey to AWS Workspaces by describing which challenges has risen a couple of years ago, and we will cover how we have defined our strategy and our roadmap for meeting our goals and also for solving our pain points. And finally, we will see also which KPIs and benefits were introduced by Amazon Workspaces. So let's start from the early beginning. A couple of years ago, Ferrari provided virtual desktop resources by leveraging an on-premises only solution, which were going out of capacity. So we needed to identify a new approach. And for this reason, we started from the very basic requirements. So first of all, the new solution must be agile, because we need to onboard our external collaborators quickly by maintaining the IT effort at minimum. The solution, of course, must be secure. We need to reduce our surface of attack because we need to preserve Ferrari intellectual property. And I think it's trivial to highlight here why Ferrari intellectual property is so valuable. The third one, the solution must be cost-effective. Hardware and licenses are expensive, so we needed to build new IT processes which helped us to keep them low. Once defined these basic requirements, we have started to explore which solutions can be leveraged. We have identified three main approaches. So first of all, VPN. But the main drawback with VPN is that they provide access to unmanaged devices. They can be considered good in terms of cost and agility. But we have decided to do not provide VPN at all. Second approach, laptops. Now you have managed devices because laptop can be managed centrally. But, as stated earlier, hardware and licenses are expensive. Moreover, managing laptop required a new shipping process for delivering them. But in Ferrari, for very particular use cases, which means for external collaborators who need to be engaged for long-term and multi-year projects, we provide them laptop. And finally, of course, VDI. They are still managed devices, and it can be considered a good solution in terms of agility. For this reason, we have decided to provide them to our global and temporary collaborators. But what about the cost? Well, it depends. Depends on your architecture. So let's see now which was our on-premises architecture, which delivers sessions to our end users. It consists of four main layers. So first of all, the hypervisor, which orchestrates the hardware resources. Second one, the access layer, which provides the authentication and the streaming services. Third, the control layer, which provides the licensing and security mechanisms. And finally, the resource layer, which delivers the virtual desktop resources. All of these technological stack was managed by Ferrari. So of course, this architecture can be considered secure because all the stuff is inside our corporate network and behind our corporate firewalls. But this solution has many pain points. First of all, time to delivery. Due to the fact that now we have to manage all the technological stack, virtual desktop resources must be prepared from scratch. And of course, this is not a good solution in terms of TCO and licensing. For the third time, I need to repeat, licensing and hardware are expensive. Moreover, this architecture introduces a very huge data center footprint, which means IT effort for maintaining it. And of course, this solution has a lack of scalability and capacity. Let's see what's happened when we introduced Amazon Workspaces. So first of all, our architecture has been decoupled. The access and control layer now are managed by AWS, and Ferrari manages the resource layer. Moreover, we can leverage some AWS services like AWS Direct Connect for reaching our systems hosted on-prem and still keep control on our security mechanisms like firewalls, MFA, and so on. So we have introduced a sort of shared responsibility model between Ferrari and AWS. So what happened to the KPIs? Well, it seems that there are only benefits, but it's not so trivial. Yes, of course, the solution is secure, the time to delivery has been reduced, and also the TCO, and so on and so forth. But, of course, this kind of solution introduces one challenge more. So while Amazon responsibility takes care of all the typical operational tasks for managing a virtual desktop infrastructure architecture, we are still responsible for managing three main processes: the VDI image management, the VDI OS upgrade management, and the VDI provisioning and deprovisioning resources. Now we will focus on the last one, because the image management and the OS upgrades management were already ongoing processes in the old architecture. So let's see what happened in a second wave of our journey. We have started to introduce cloud automation in our architecture, with the objective to keep the workspace's cost low. Let's see how this cloud automation works. So first of all, we have an event bridge scheduler, which triggers an AWS Lambda each 20 minutes. The AWS Lambda, in turn, can query our LDAP directory for retrieving user data information. Thanks to this user data information, the AWS Lambda can create or terminate VDIs, and before finalizing the code, the AWS Lambda sent all of this information to an Amazon S3 bucket for historical purposes. Finally, thanks to the AWS Glue and Amazon Athena, administrators can query all the user history in terms of provided image, provided bundle, provided workspace. This is a very, very useful solution for us, because even if the AWS Lambda terminates the workspace to our end user, we are able to provide it back in minutes by preserving user data, user profile, and so on. So thanks to this new managed solution, we have reduced the complexity of our VDI architecture because we have reduced its related cost and time for maintaining it. In other words, we have focused on innovation. For this reason, we are proud to state here that thanks to Amazon Workspaces, we have reduced the VDI related incident by the 67%. We have finally halved our assigned licenses thanks to the license included model in the pay-as-you-go. And finally, we have reduced by the 94% the time to delivery a new virtual desktop resource. If you want to learn more on Ferrari and the AWS End User Computing use case, feel free to reach out our published customer story. And thanks for your attention.
Grazie.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so proud to say I was in that shot. And it was one of the craziest days of my life when I got to hang out with a bunch of former, I don't think any of them were current, but former Formula One cars driven by a lot of the drivers themselves. Really, really cool story, Giovanni. What an amazing architecture. Remember that comment that Gartner made about workspaces viability, right? I think Giovanni's slide took us through a bunch of different AWS services that are used to manage the environment. That is exactly what we're talking about. And it's so cool to work with such an intense customer who's spent so much time thinking about how to create those efficiencies that you saw, that is huge, huge wins in time to deploy in ability to reduce incidents. Like, my gosh, that hopefully frees you up to spending more time enjoying a lot of the work that you guys do with Ferrari. All right, when I think of Bloomberg, I think of financial data. I think of, the financial industry. I think of news. I think of media. But I got a cool story for you, and Michael's going to tell it. Think about all of the ISVs that are out there in the world that we get a chance to interact with on a regular basis. Maybe somewhat fun, maybe somewhat deliberate about the way they go about doing things. The cool thing of working with the Bloomberg team is they said, screw everything that we thought, we're going to take a completely different approach. Here to tell you about it, Michael, come on up.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Good afternoon, everybody. As mentioned, my name is Michael Beal, and I help lead our data science efforts over at Bloomberg Enterprise Data. And I'm joined in the room by many very smart Bloomberg colleagues. This was a true collective effort. A lot of innovations, a lot of really thinking about it from scratch and trying to solve the problem. I know people probably know the name Bloomberg and what it's about, but I won't assume that you understand exactly the problem that we're doing. So I'm going to start off by trying to talk a little bit about the context, kind of give you some view as to who's the client persona and what's the problem we were really trying to solve here. Why did we need a new solution? Show it to you, and then we'll walk through the actual architecture diagram and some of the cool innovations that we came about. So I'll start with that because I just would love a raise your hands. How many people have actually interacted with Bloomberg's data before in their careers? That's a very good number. That's not bad at all. And this is probably what you think of when you think of Bloomberg, right? A terminal. Bloomberg has been around, and it was founded in 1981. It has come to really mean bringing transparency to otherwise opaque markets. This entire terminal was about putting in one place all of the world's information, having that be of very high quality, having it tied together, and having it update in real time, and then putting a nice solution software interface around it such that people could do their research, they could do their analytics, markets, and communications. And it really has been driving the capital markets since its founding in 1983, and it continues to go strong. Every year you hear about a Bloomberg killer somewhere in Silicon Valley. It's a hard thing, right? And it's because there is a lot of valuable data within here. And we've really grown as an organization, right? Like, people know the terminal. But from the terminal came enterprise data and indices, which is the part of the organization that I'm in. We don't really want a human interface. We're just scientists. We just want the data that powers the terminal, right? From there, there's people that are just focused on, I need the ability to trade and execute and interact with my counterparts. The data is not as important. The fact that there's all these people on the platform that I need to communicate with to be able to do my job, that's what's important. Those messages are incredibly sensitive. And many, many more that have grown over the many decades that Bloomberg has been around and thriving. Most notably, its news and media business. You can't walk through an airport or see a TV without seeing the Bloomberg components come through. And importantly, as the firm has grown, we've gone to really service clients within the finance realm, the governments, law, as well as corporations more and more as more data scientists are coming into broader corporations, of which I'm sure many of you represent that transition that's been occurring. So what I want to do, though, is focus in on who we as an organization are really trying to solve for. And that is the data science researcher, right? Many of the people in this room, as I alluded to, the terminal is helpful, but it's not really going to power our type of workflows. We need to have the data, we need to be able to put it into our systems, and then we need to be able to automate our workflows accordingly. And in particular, a lot of our workflows are driving more and more AI. And in part, particularly for those who are involved in the financial services industry, trying to make a prediction as to whether a stock's going to go up. That prediction is no different than, is my supply chain at risk? Where am I likely to increase my margins? It's all about taking some data and making a prediction as to the future. And as more and more data has come in, you would think that would make it easier, but it actually makes it more difficult to actually be able to narrow down in terms of what's driving the actual insights. And that's also because now people are truly expected to use AI and ML. It's hard to walk into a client's meeting saying that you've made intelligent suggestions or predictions unless you're leveraging some of those components. And everybody understands now that in order to be able to have the type of compute and insights, the cloud delivery is a requirement. It's no longer a choice. You want to throw all the data at it, and you want to be able to make smart decisions. But importantly, as these clients are continuously thinking about, I have a model, it's making pretty good predictions, but it's missing out on X, or it doesn't understand scenario Y, they have to go and find additional data that will help give their models those insights to be able to make better predictions. Yes, a lot of the innovation is still being driven around the models, but if, for everybody who's, a fan of Andrew Ng like I am, he's been talking about data-driven AI for a long time, and that's really what I think Bloomberg makes its bones around, is having high-quality data. So it's very clear for this persona that they need to be able to test more and more data to be able to find ways to make better decisions and outperform their competitors. And over the years, Bloomberg has truly grown into this ecosystem of data that is powering the terminal, starting off with the security master and how our tickers being changed and security actions. And then from there, moving into pure regulatory data like sanctions and withholding tax and collateral eligibility, to derived data, evaluated pricing, and then more and more into research data, kind of clear understandings as to what's driving a company, what's driving an economy, with a real focus on, is this data well suited for systematic investors and systematic researchers to be able to provide it to their AI models, because we really focus on it being AI-ready data. And so yes, all of that data is there for the data scientist researcher to be able to incorporate. It's very well modeled, and it can tie together with others. And then once you've figured out what data you want to do and you want to be able to integrate it, we spent a lot of time working with AWS and others, and I think that's probably a part of another session, around ensuring that it's very simple to acquire the data, and then making sure that it's very well modeled, right? And that it all ties together around what we call the unified data model, which you can think of as just primary keys that are interoperable and well consistent across. And then once you've figured out the modeling challenge and have been able to leverage our kind of approaches and high-quality metadata for that, then we think about wherever you want it published, we can do that, right? And as I mentioned, cloud delivery being the key, particularly for research and reporting, SFTP for more operational workflows. Or if you don't want it pushed, you can do any type of pull protocol, and we're actually launching a Python API. So all of this is great. All this data, once you figure out what you want to do with it, very seamless and easily integratable into your workflows. So what's the problem? I liked your constraints. Life is all about constraints. And for our clients, the primary constraint is time. Yes, there's some money, but the researchers are probably the most expensive people within their organization. So their time is the way that they're calculating that money. It takes too long. You know that we have all of this data. It's likely to be able to add value, but it takes too long to figure out, is this actually going to help me? And that's particularly a problem, because the portion that takes so long isn't necessarily the part that the data scientists and PhDs have to do. Sure, it takes about 40 days, right, in terms of getting the data tested, preparing it, reading the documentation, loading it into your system. That takes 10 days. But the real pain point is that the administrative tasks required to share the data, those take 50 days. And that's really the full 90. Now, in order for any of our clients or prospects to get their administrative teams to devote those 50 days, it forces a researcher to say, yes, this data is worth you putting your time into it. That's difficult if you haven't actually looked at it, right? So that administrative task side was what we really wanted to get around. We have both our own proprietary data, but we also have third-party licensed data, and we fundamentally cannot share it with people unless they are a client under our contracts. So then, what is the solution? What's needed? A secure coding environment for clients to immediately interact with and review Bloomberg Enterprise data products in a frictionless manner. No more, we really should get rid of the data loading. Certainly we want to get rid of all the administrative. But everything except for those 10 days around data testing, it was our goal to get rid of that, right? And so in order to do that, what did we need to be able to solve for? The core problem is that a friend of mine probably 20 years ago said something, and we got into a big argument about this data sharing thing. And he did say something to me that said, that which can be read, Michael, can always be written. Right? And you can't control it. Once it's in memory, somebody can do something with it wherever it is after that. That was before these virtual workspaces existed. So that was the core thing that we needed to solve for. We cannot enable clients to be able to test data, test drive data, and then never come back with the car, right? The second one, much more traditional, right? The core security, encryption, access control, network securities, intrusion detection. The core thing here was we didn't want to have to worry about that. We wanted AWS to take all of the burden for that. And then the final one was ensuring that we had a frictionless experience with one-click deployment, seamless authentication, and reporting and auditing. And most importantly, our clients do not want us to know what they are doing. They don't want us to know how they're looking at it, how they define their data, what they're going to use with it. We have to stand up for it, being sure that this is a private environment where they can safely do their work and analyze and make smarter decisions. And so that's exactly what we were able to build. And just on the right, you can kind of see the workflow, but so that you can see it. But I'm just going to talk to what it is. It's really a fully managed Jupyter environment, right? Such that once you get into the AWS environment, which is now coming in and it's launching and going through our security protocols, once you're in there, you're now safe to be able to interact with all this data, and we're safe to be able to share it with our clients in this environment because we can confidently say that they can't take it out of that environment, right? And that they're also confidently able to do their work because we can stand up and say, this is a secure and transient environment powered by AWS. It spun up when you came in. We couldn't see what you were doing once you were in it, and once you were done, it terminated itself, and it continuously goes through. That's an incredible innovation, which I think when I first joined the firm about 2 years ago to work on this project, I was like, yes, so what? Like, we're sharing data. We should have been sharing it in the first place. But no, we found a way to be able to seamlessly enable people to collaborate with us and to evaluate and enhance their own work without having to worry about the security risks and exfiltration risks that are underlying it, thanks to AWS. So hopefully you get a sense as to what it is that we've built. Now let's actually look at the architecture that powers it. So there were a couple of phases that went through this. The first phase, I'd say, was from around this time last year until about June of this year. And that was our single region, right? Everything was in US East, and we were just building it out, starting to add clients, and making sure that everything worked. And so within here, the first thing that we wanted to be able to make sure of as we look at this transfer of the networks. So when you look at it with the HTTP, which we're going to cross into, HTTPS, that's the public intranet. You know, everybody may come in there with, whether they meant to or not, there may be something malicious that's tagging along with them. So the first thing that we wanted to be able to do was after we've actually authenticated the user and we know who that person is, that creates a little bit of a wall of trust where we expect that they're not going to be nefarious players, but there may be an occasional bad actor or they may not meaningfully introduce risk to the system. So as we come into that first AWS Workspace browser, what we're passing along in that public link is an actual deep link, which is a private and a public key pairing. And that private public key pairing goes through this Amazon Workspace's customer network interface, and it transfers over from that public HTTPS protocol over to the private within the VPC environment of an HTTP. And that's passed in the LinkedIn as a part of the header, or not in the LinkedIn. It's part of the link as a part of the in the header. And so that then goes into the application load balancer, where the load balancer is ensuring that every single time we're setting up the proper security certificates and we're communicating further down into the first stage of where we actually have some safety. So now we're behind the VPC, and now we've established our own security groups. So within these security groups, they're logically imposed by us, and this is something that we do pay attention to and was actually approved by many cloud governance committees within our organization. And we feel like that's the safe space. So the first thing that we're doing now is this EC2 hub proxy, which I guess is kind of like a secure endpoint in the way that we're thinking of that, of actually being able to communicate from the outside into our actual instances. And it's going to connect up against the first security group where we've controlled all of our core components. And this auto-scaling group is picking up from our Amazon EC2, which is based in US East. NA East. And importantly, this is one core instance which has stood up to all of the internal protocols, internal reviews. Everybody within the firm feels comfortable about the security and the approaches that we're doing there. And then from there, we're scaling that out into the actual instance contents. Again, this EC2 hub proxy can communicate against the local authentication proxy, and I'll bring up why that's important. Because within that instance there is where all the data and the actual client is doing their work. Now, remember that I said that we cannot see what another client is doing when they're in the environment, and we don't want any other clients to see what they're doing, and we don't want them to communicate. So it's within this local authentication proxy where we're passing over that deep link that the services actually know this is for client X, this is for client Y, and never the two shall they meet, and they can actually be self-contained. And that's important because at the end, they're sitting down on Amazon EC2 instances for which we, to your point, we've been able to leverage fairly commodity workflows and spin those up on demand. And the last thing that we do is then we come into the Amazon ECS because everything now is behind this firewall. It can't get out to the public internet. So for some services where we do want that to be able to get out to the public internet, then the ECS is enabling us to be able to do that. So from here, now that we know exactly within this security group and the local authentication proxy what client A versus client B versus C is looking at and what they need, then through this passing, it can actually go through our S3 VPC endpoint and hit on our AWS VDR bucket, where we have all of the underlying data sitting there, and just whichever notebook needs that data, it's able to query it so that we're not replicating it across all of the EC2 instances. Now, within this security group, we can manage the controls, we can manage the approaches. We will think about that. But everything else that goes around this ecosystem, we don't have to think about because of the AWS setup, which enables us to be more thoughtful about how we're leveraging it. So this worked very well. We got great feedback from our clients, and we were excited about it, got management on board, and decided to scale it. What do you think was the first thing that we did once we started scaling it internationally? I won't ask in a Q&A, but I will just tell you this. Japan, Hong Kong, their experience is terrible. Right? It's laggy because they're coming back to the US and hitting up against our boxes. It's kind of like playing a video game, but having that lag in the joystick, and obviously you're going to crash every time. So that was because everything was always going over to the US East region. So what we ended up doing here, which I just wanted to highlight for some of the people who are thinking about scaling horizontally, was because of the regional distribution, what we decided to look at was, yes, we are spinning up each instance in the exact same way as approved by the Cloud Governance Committee within Bloomberg's ecosystem. But what we're going to decide is, how should we decide which region to then allocate the data to and the actual instance to through this, what we call the VDR orchestrator? Well, the answer is we send a ping, right, from the Workspace's web URL to each one of these regions. And whichever one comes back the fastest, as the actual environment's getting configured, then we use that in that last step to say, yes, spin it up in this region. And after we did that, dramatic improvement, and everybody was fairly happy. So with that, I'll end with this idea of kind of once you've actually gone through this of leveraging US East as the core over to Northeast 1 and around the world, we've leveraged this both in terms of the US distribution, but then also globally through the mechanism that I spoke about. And that enables us to be able to be very thoughtful in terms of where those controls are being instituted within the organization, how we're managing our change approval processes, and then making sure that we're able to very simply replicate that across all of our other containers as we spin them up, either in the instance or across regions. So in conclusion, I was very excited about this because it really did do exactly what we were looking for. It reduced that time of value. Clients went from spending 90 days to be able to look at something, 50 days before they could even devote any work to it, to now being able to get direct access to the data within 4 hours, which enabled them to accelerate their time and be able to get to work faster and make smarter decisions. Lastly, or second, we were able to really enforce the key tenet of Bloomberg, which is that we cannot let the data outside of the ecosystem under any circumstances. Right? And so through this, we were able to enable and enforce that clients cannot extract data, but then also to be able to live up to clients' need to be able to see true production data without any kind of filtering around it. And then finally, and almost most importantly, we were able to provide a superior user experience because we didn't have to worry about that portion of the experience. We worried about the data, the notebooks, the security, our processes, and we left it to AWS to ensure that when you were actually spinning up a new cluster, it's going to spin up on time, or we were on the call with everybody pretty quickly when the deep links weren't passing as expected. So in terms of the future of where we go, we started off with this and everybody was really scared. We can't put our data, we can't let anybody see this, like our data is very valuable. Now people have come around and we have a laundry list of new products, new clients that want to have access to this under that simple guise of now creating a safe, what I like to call Geneva environment, not our environment, not the client's environment, safe for them to be able to do their work and analysis, and safe for us to be able to share our data in a compliant manner. So if you'd like to learn more about this, now I will ask all the Bloomberg colleagues just to put your hands up. There are many of us here, many here. Please let us know. But yes, it's been a truly amazing ecosystem and very thoughtful and grateful to have been able to partner with the AWS team. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I told you that was going to be super cool. You know, one of my favorite things about it, this is not just, you know, blase, you know, have a web page and have your users log in. This is an entire system and several different components. Remember I talked about that viability, that global footprint. That is exactly what Bloomberg espoused with this solution. This is a solution. Can't wait to see it take off. Can't wait to talk about the next versions of it, the next set of iterations. We see the secure browser used in law enforcement today. We see it used in the financial industry today. We see it used in government today. We see it used in all kinds of different applications, ways that we wouldn't expect. Again, it is not just simple pixel streaming of your web pages. This is a solution that you're going to be able to deliver value for your customers. All right, we are running out of time. We have a ton of content that we're delivering throughout the week. Please take some time, chalk talks, hands-on sessions, some builder sessions as well. We're going to get a chance to get hands-on keyboard with our Workspaces core offering, hands-on keyboards with our Citrix and other Workspaces thin client offering, my apologies. And then finally, you're going to have a number of different ways to meet the colleagues up here on the stage, to hang out with me. I look forward to getting to learn more about your use cases, getting to work more closely with you. Have a wonderful, wonderful, safe week here at reInvent. Thank you so much for coming.